So most new agents, or even agents that have been around for a long time, think that when you go out and show houses, you just go meet them, you just open the door. But I'm telling you, there is so much more that goes into it, and you need to have a plan, you need to have a framework and a strategy to make sure that the client feels comfortable, especially if it's an online lead, that you're making the right disclosures to them in terms of, not real estate disclosures, but things in the property that they should be aware of. So I'm gonna take you through a multi-part framework that's gonna give you a lot of information to think about for your next showing, and I think you'll find it helpful because a lot of people go into this with no plan whatsoever. All right, so the lean here is going to be like this is a person that you have not met before. Like this is going to be, I would call it kind of the most difficult scenario to work through. It's just, let's start from the scratch. Let's pretend like these people aren't your best friends, because the way you'd show your home to your best friends is probably going to be a little bit different. This is somebody you're trying to get into a relationship with. Most people would say the goal is to sell the house. I would argue that the goal is to build a relationship with the client, and hopefully they like the house enough to buy the first one they see. I think we can all agree, for those of us that are in real estate, that rarely happens. So the focus should be on how do I earn this customer, and more importantly, how do I make them feel comfortable so that they'll work with me for life. All right, so number one in the framework is going to be you're just pulling up to the house. You are about to meet these people. Let's pretend like you've never met them before, and I'm going to give you a couple of the tips and secrets that you're going to want to be aware of. So this is not the time to be trying to sell these people on your services or anything like that. They are there to see the property, and that's all you're going to be providing at the beginning. So after your introductions, you're going to walk up to the front door. You're going to be about to open the door, and there's a couple things you're going to want to say to them before you even get started. So this is about being competent, but also making them feel comfortable. Everybody wants to feel comfortable. They want to feel like they're working with a professional. So this is the first point in the framework. It's how you start. So again, you want to make people feel comfortable, so how you start matters. Make it okay for them to not like the house. Make it known that it's not a big deal. Like, hey, if we go inside the house, we walk in, you do not like what you see, we don't have any obligation to continue to look at the house. Because for some reason, I've shown thousands of houses, we always do this dance where we continue to look at a property that sometimes you can tell that the client clearly does not want to buy. They're thinking in their head, you're a salesperson, and that you're going to want them to buy that house. They think that that's what you're there for, right? Is to earn the commission selling them that property. So make it okay for them to not like the house. That's number one. A couple of quick reminders. We're seeing a lot of houses with surveillance. So I would point out the surveillance to them. If there's a ring camera or anything like that, I would make it known that there could be a chance that the seller has that camera connected, especially if the house is occupied. They could be listening to everything you say. We've ran into scenarios where the seller did hear them say something about the property that was not nice, or that was a part of maybe a potential negotiation. So I would just remind them that, hey, there's surveillance here. Let's keep our conversations about the house private. If it turns out that you want to make an offer on the house, let's talk about that after we go back outside. All right, so the second part of this framework is how do you show the house? A lot of us have seen HGTV. We see people presenting the home. That's not the way that I would recommend. Again, let's assume this is a first meeting. It is completely okay for you to point out things about the house that are good, but also not so good. I'm gonna be looking around with you. You feel free to look as you please. I don't need to present the house to you. There's things based off my experience that I'm gonna be looking for that maybe you wouldn't see that I see because I've sold hundreds of homes. If you haven't sold hundreds of homes, say something different. They're gonna know that you have their back. So again, first showing, relationship, you're after the relationship, you're after the trust. Don't make it about selling that house. Make it about you being there to be their guide. So on our team, a lot of the agents are trained specifically what to look out for. They could be brand new, they could have never sold a home, and we're teaching them how to spot things that a person buying their first home or even their second or their third may not know. Recalled electrical panels, something that will come up at the inspection. So I'm drawing a blank here and there's thousands of things, right? It is completely okay for you to make them aware of those things, but what you don't want to do is freak them out about them either. So let's say there's a water tank, and you know that a lot of water tanks have an expansion tank to them. In this particular home is missing one, it's completely okay to point that out and say, here's something I notice. It doesn't have an expansion tank. It's something that can be added. It's not something to cause you to not make an offer on this home about. Earn their trust. Everything that you see, I would make it known. Don't hide things. It's going to come up later at the inspection. When it comes up later at the inspection, if they end up buying that house and you point it out, you look all the more competent. So if you don't already know a lot of things about inspections, I'd encourage you to learn as much as possible. Be a student. Know as much as you can. Every day I'm learning. I've been doing this for 20 years. There's still things I don't know. Okay? It never stops. You're always going to be learning. Once you're a student, the more things that you accumulate that you know, the more things you can point out at a showing makes you more valuable to the client. Again, first, let's assume first meeting. They're trying to decide who they're going to work with. If this is an online lead, for instance. If it's somebody who that's a part of your family, maybe you don't have to do these things as much, but we're always after the relationship. So that's part 2. How you show the home matters. Another thing I want to talk about before we move to the next part of the framework is how you show the home matters. So don't assume that the things that you like, they like as well. What I mean by that is there was once a time where I sold new construction homes. I would show the house and I would point out the upgrades in the home. Oh, this is great. It has granite countertops. What I come to learn is there were plenty of people who did not want those things. So the things that I thought were cool and great and that were upgrades maybe didn't interest that party. And so if I'm sitting here saying it's so great and they actually don't like those elements, it doesn't make me look better to that client. What you're going to want to do is ask questions. If you could buy the perfect home, what kind of countertop would it have? Questions that let them speak about what it is that they want. So don't assume, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So as you're showing the home, you're going to want to read the body language of the person looking at the house. They're usually going to give you the clues on whether they like the property or not. If you can tell that they don't like the property, it's perfectly okay to start talking about what it is that they don't like about the property. And then the opposite is true. If they're excited about the property, it's, hey, what do you see doing with this room? Just trying to mentally move them into the property. So again, you got to think on your feet a little bit, but read the client, look at their body language, and that will tell you what to do typically. Another little tip, again, on how you show the house is that the same questions usually come up, and you're going to want to be prepared for those questions. So you don't have to know everything about the house, but what you want to do is you do want to read through the marketing description, and there's certain questions that are going to always come up. How old is the house? In our area, is the house on a sewer or septic? How big is the lot? The year built thing comes up all the time. How old is this house? What we do is we take the listing with us, or if I'm showing a couple of houses, I screenshot the listing, I keep it in my phone, I pull it up, I look at it before I go in the property, and I kind of study it real quick. Sometimes the questions are going to be deeper, so if you want extra credit and you want to be really prepared, you want to look through everything that was provided in the listing. So sometimes there's a disclosure statement. You're going to want to be a student of that property because the person that you're helping, they think you know everything about the house, even though you're not the listing agent. So you're going to want to learn as much as possible, and then when you don't know the answer to the question, it's always, hey, I'm going to follow up and get you that right away. A lot of the times, if you have the right resources, tax records, you can look it up right on your phone. If you end up looking it up on your phone, right then, be sure that you remind the client that, hey, I'm going to see if I can look that up right now. Tell them why you're on your phone so that they're aware that you're not texting somebody or doing something else. Never want to look like you're disinterested in the showing. So never take other calls unless it is massively important. These are some of the common mistakes I see all the time with new agents. So number 3 is a question that will help you get past the body language thing. Like if you can't tell, usually people will just offer it up, right? Like this place sucks, or this place is awesome, I want to buy it, right? Sometimes they're indifferent, they're in between, or sometimes when they're new, they don't want you to know they're excited, or they don't want you to know that they hate the place. Again, we're assuming for showing. So what you're going to want to do in the event you have no idea, right? You can't seem to connect, they're not really offering up any information. You're going to want to ask them for the third part of the framework, which is a 1 to 10 rating. Okay, so you can do this inside the house, you can do it out on the driveway when you're kind of separating and going your separate ways, and we'll talk about that in a second. On a scale of 1 to 10, where's this house? Is this like a 7 or an 8? It's okay to throw it out just like that to make it not weird. Like you want to be comfortable asking the question, and you want to have a couple questions you can go to. Again, if the showing's really weird, you don't really know what to say, you want to think about what you're going to say if you run into that situation. A lot of times you just really connect with people right away, and it's just, you don't even have to think about what you're going going to ask. But in the event that you don't connect right away, you're going to want to have a few questions you can go to so you're not doing an awkward dance. All right, so the 1 to 10 rating. Let's say they like the place. It's an 8. Okay, it's an 8. That's pretty good. So would you like to proceed? You know, we can help you write an offer. Here's how it works. They're going to tell you right then, and well, I'm not ready for that, you know, whatever the case may be. So you're going to want to know, at least you know it's an 8. So a lot of agents just go out, show the houses. They never ask questions like that, and they really have no idea when they leave. Did the person like it or not? They're waiting for the client to say, I want to make an offer, and that's not what I'd recommend doing. Every property you should have a rating on. When you leave that property, you start training the client, and they get in the habit of you having a conversation about the rating. So if it's an 8, and you've heard this script before, what would it take to make it be a 10? I don't recommend asking that question. I would just say, is an 8 good enough, you know, for us to proceed with an offer? And you can ask at what price, but it's a little bit of a loaded question because they're usually going to ask you, what do you think we should offer? Or they're going to want a lowball. You want to set it up to where, you know, a house can be listed for whatever number, right? A house in our market could be listed for $399. When I walk in it, I don't really know for sure because I haven't run the comparables. I don't really know for sure if it's worth $425 priced at $399. I don't know if it's worth $375 and it's overpriced at $399. If you're an agent and you think you know the answer to that, you really, really, really know your market. Most people don't do that hour of work or 2 hours of work to figure that out before they go show the house. It's just not feasible. Going to show 5 houses, you're not going to be able to run comps on all 5. If you do, you need to reorganize your priorities because that would be an interesting way to run a business. We're going to delay the pricing conversation, the offer conversation for later. So you want to say, you know, what I'd like to do is I'd like to figure out, I know this house is listed for $399. I would really love to know if this house is priced right, and I cannot tell you that right now because it usually takes me an hour or 2 of thorough statistical research to figure that out for you because the market goes up and down. The market's different in different areas that are even close nearby. So we're going to want to find out the true value of this house because if I figure out that this place is worth $425 and it's actually priced really well right now, we're going to reach out to the listing agent and you're going to want to be a little more aggressive with your offer. On the flip side, if I think it's come to find that it's worth a little bit less, I'm going to want you to be aware of that because I don't want you to invest more in a property than it's currently worth unless I've made you aware that that's the case. Again, you're the guide, you're the advocate. You want to be the person making a difference in their life. You want to earn their business forever. So it's perfectly fine. What you need to do is invest in your future and your relationship and not be so worried about selling that house. The point of this whole video. So that is a way you can get there, the 1 to 10. That's the third part of the framework. So part 4 is you're going to end up more than likely having some sort of driveway conversation. So we call it the driveway conversation. A lot of agents skip this conversation. Okay, assume this is your first meeting. In a world where you are working with people that you're meeting online and then you're going and showing them the house, like this video is geared towards, you don't really get that luxury. And a lot of times what we found is no matter what your skills are, it's really difficult to get somebody to drive and sit in your office before going out and showing houses. They really just want to see properties. Redfin, Zillow, you know, they really encourage you to go meet the client, not really be too concerned if they're pre-approved. So part 4, when it comes to having that driveway consultation, you have to get in some sort of conversation about what you do for people that makes you different. It can't be basic, in my opinion. Like, you don't want to just say you can show them more houses because let's be real. I think there's currently about 1.4 million real estate agents in the country and they can all show houses, right? So what kind of an offer is that? Be thinking about what your offer is. Some people will call it a pitch. That's an intimidating word for a lot of people, but you have to get in some conversation about how you can help them. I would encourage you to think of something unique and different that matches your skill set. This is a time when you're going to want to have a quick question about, hey, are you guys familiar with what's going on in the real estate market right now? That's a nice, easy lead in. If you really know what's going on in that area, if you know the current month over month appreciation rate, year over year, month over month, if you know any of those things, this is the time when you figure out a way to explain that to them without overloading them with information, how it's not confusing. I usually talk about how quickly houses are coming on and off the market. I usually talk about what's the average offer look like right now. Keep it simple, just a couple of things. You want to flex a little bit of market knowledge so that person knows that they are working with somebody competent. If we could rewind, and I told you that if you could take a lead, an online lead, a first client showing, and that your rate of closing could go up 90% if you just showed them 3 properties, you might think a little differently about making sure that you show more than 1 house. That is always the goal in our team. We don't want to show 1 home, we want to show at least 3. The reason why this is so important is because the client needs to know that you even want to continue working with them, especially if you've been helpful, kind of cool. At some point you need to say that I would like to continue to help you find a house if you haven't found somebody else that you're really comfortable with, that you really love. You have to get in some kind of ask. Different subject, but I see this happen at open houses a lot, where the agent is kind of a wallflower. They're there, they answer some questions, but they never actually get in any kind of ask, or they never really pitch their services. They never really talk about how they could really help the client. The more you understand about what they're looking for, and then the more you understand what's around you in the market. For instance, that person says, well, this house is only a 7 because the yard is really small. Okay, well, I know another 4-bedroom house that has a bigger backyard. Like, you got to be a student of the game to earn their business. So practice whatever it is your ask is. Learn and understand how you're different and be able to put in words in a minute or less. If you take the time to figure that out for yourself, it will do you and your business a lot of favors. So if you're an agent out there and you want to learn more, little tips, secrets, ways to make things easier for yourself, ways to save you time, ways to make sure that you are actually asking the right questions, be sure to follow our YouTube account. So you're going to be looking for a playlist that talks about agent training, agent coaching, that sort of thing.